Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Victoria and I'm the host of the Avenue Masterclasses. This is episode 3. I will be joined by Mazze Aderhold from Assimilate, who will be walking us through how to use the Live FX software. He will let us know how to configure the project, import footage, set up the virtual stage, and create the projection setup. And without further ado, I will be giving over the reins to Mazze. Mazze, this is your turn.
No problem. Yeah, I'm even getting WhatsApp messages of people telling me you can't hear you. Well, hope you do now. Let me start the screen share again. Here we go. I'm Mazze Aderhold from Assimilate. Today we'll be talking about Live FX Studio and how to set up a project and how the app overall works. I'm not sure how far we will be getting. As you can see, I'm also joined with my Windows workstation for an Unreal workflow, but I'm not sure we'll get to that today. I also won't bore you for too long with this PowerPoint presentation, but you should know who you're dealing with. So I'll just give you a brief introduction of who we are and what we've been doing for the past 20 years. Speaking of which, 20 years ago, roughly, we introduced Scratch to the market. And at the time, it was a 2K-DPX player that cost $70,000, software only. Well, nowadays it's a bit cheaper, and it also has a bigger tool set. So it does color grading, finishing, and daily transcoding, meaning we know color pretty well and we know format playback pretty well. It has a younger brother, Play Pro Studio, and in, I believe, 2020, we came out with these two live tools, Live Looks and Live Assist. Live Assist being a superset of Live Looks, meaning it does everything that Live Looks does, which is camera live grading mainly. Plus, Live Assist on top of that can also record and play back multiple camera streams. And from these two tools grew Live FX Studio, which started out as our green screen previous solutions. And from that, we moved on to virtual production with LED volumes and also image-based lighting. So in this graph, you see a virtual production setup in an ideal world where only our software is being used. At the heart and center, you have Live FX Studio. And as you can see, you can feed it 2D content, 2.5D setups, 3D environments in the form of notch blocks and USD scenes, and also 360 and 180-degree footage. And of course, also cylindrical panoramics if you happen to have. And LiveFX puts those through however many LED processes onto the LED volume. We also have an Unreal workflow, which is fairly generic. And you are free to replace Unreal with, say, Chaos Arena or Blender or Unity or whatever you feel like using today. And over here, you see Live FX. So like I said, Live FX started out as our green screen previs live compositing solution. And as such, it also did image-based lighting because that's equally important in a green screen environment. Nowadays, it's predominantly used for image-based lighting only. And yeah, LiveFX Studio essentially is a superset. So it does everything that LiveFX does, but it has 3 advantages over the non-studio LiveFX. A, it does projection mapping, which is kind of essential for virtual production. It supports the higher-end camera tracking solutions, such as Moses, OptiTrack, Vicon, and a few other names. And it comes with a finishing tool set, Scratch, namely. So you can playback, prep, and transcode your footage into the desired codec as you see fit. These are the 3 things that Studio has over the non-Studio version. Now, question is, because like I said, Studio is a superset. It also does image-based lighting. So why have that separate here? Well, the thing is, on bigger setups, typically the guy who takes care of the lights is a different guy from the one who takes care of the LED volume. And you don't want the two to start fighting over who gets to use mouse and keyboard. So what you can do is simply outsource the image-based lighting part to a separate workstation, link it up with the main workstation here, yeah, do your image-based lighting here. And since it's only image-based lighting, it's enough to use Live FX and not necessarily the Studio version. All right. I'll ignore all that over here for the time being. It's not that important. And move on to screen configuration. Um, I'll only touch this briefly because it's not that specific to how you create a project and run it in Live FX. However, your LED volume might require only just one LED processor, but the bigger it gets, the more LED processors it will need. And each LED processor typically takes in a feed via SDI, via DisplayPort, HDMI, etc., meaning an output from your graphics card. And a normal graphics card has four outputs. So one output is reserved for the UI monitor, obviously. And the other three you can use to drive up to three LED processors with a single GPU. Now, the trick is to get all these three outputs in sync. And one way to do that is through a feature called NVIDIA Mosaic, which basically wraps these three physical outputs into one big virtual output. And that's also what Windows sees. It basically sees one big monitor output to put the desktop to. You can also run these three outputs individually, but then they are not necessarily in sync unless you use a quadro sync card, which costs money. Why would you want them in sync? Mainly if, let's say, two LED processors here serve one and the same wall. Let's say this processor takes care of the left half and this processor takes care of the right half. Then they need to be absolutely in sync, right? If one half comes in a frame late or so, you would see a seam right in the center and it would look odd and you don't want that. Whereas if, let's say, all three processes drive different screens, one is for the back wall, one is for the ceiling screen, one is for the wild wall somewhere far away, I don't know. Whether these are 100% in sync doesn't matter that much. It always depends on the scene, of course, and it might matter. But I would say in the majority of all scenes, if the ceiling is a frame or two behind, you wouldn't see that anyways. So there's that. Of course, you can upgrade to two GPUs and feed more LED processors. And instead of going out through the GPU, you could also go out through SDI cards. We do support AJA and Blackmagic, and we do not limit you in the sense of how many SDI cards or how many SDI outputs you can use. Same with the GPU outputs. It all depends on what your hardware can do. Realistically speaking, the limit will probably be two SDI cards that are 8K capable, giving you up to 8 UHD-sized outputs. You're free to add in a third card if you want, but yeah, I do think you'll run into bus limitations pretty soon. And of course, you can mix and match SDI and GPU outputs. It's just, well, they won't be in sync. Everything we do inside our software happens on the GPU. So if you output from the GPU, that's the most direct latency-free way to output anything. Whereas outputting through SDI cards requires us first to send everything off the GPU to the SDI card, and on the SDI card buffer frames to not get any stuttering. I don't know. Our developers explained it to me why we have to do that. It's a technical necessity, has to be done. Otherwise, all hell breaks loose. So there's that. And it's something that not only we have to do, everybody who uses an SDI card has to do. Okay, enough here. Let's start into Live FX. So let me, oops, there went my screen share. Here we go again. And let's start Live FX. Here we go. So this is how the software comes up. Generally, up here you see things, and down here you do things. If you click in here, you can see what you have licensed, what version you're running, etc., and a few properties about the system you're using. Over here on the left, you have a bunch of settings. We won't spend too much time in here, but I just give you a brief overview. System settings, everything about your machine, your hardware. For instance, panel setup. If you're using a grading panel, you want to enable that here. And I'll also go over here to the Advanced tab. There's a whole bunch of settings here, as you can see. And you can search for these settings down here. Typically, you only need to touch these if something's not working the way it should. and you're being advised by support to do that. Otherwise, no need to necessarily go in here. Video I/O settings. In here, we have all the video outputs from your system. So any GPU output or SDI output if you're using any SDI cards. You can enable these here. Right now, I only have our virtual NDI device, plus my FaceTime camera and my iPhone camera, which macOS magically recognizes. And you can configure these here. So you can choose your resolution, your output frame rate that you want, and how many output and input channels you want. These channels are not just audio. Many people think they are just audio. No, they are actually video and audio channels. I'll leave it with one output and one input for the time being. And then we go into the user settings. The user settings mainly control the look and feel of Live FX. There's two settings in here that are quite interesting. One is the control gearing here. The normal control gearing is a speed of 75, and if you hold down Shift, it's slower. It's just 25. What's meant with this, by default, the gesture here is set to circular, meaning when you have a numeric parameter like this, you click into it and you circle around it clockwise or counterclockwise. And if you hold down Shift, as you can see, it goes much slower. Now, many people are not aware that this is the default, has been the default for 20 years, so our users by now know it. But anybody who's new to the software maybe expects horizontal or vertical dragging instead. So you can switch that here, and now you can drag horizontal or vertical if you want. I'll leave this back to circular because that's what I've been using for the past 12 years or so. The other setting I want to highlight here is the swipe sensitivity. We have swipeable menus to the left and right. I'll quickly enter a project to show you that, like the project tree over here, right? So I just hit the edge of the screen to swipe this in or out, and same over here. This is the metadata stack, shows me metadata of the selected shot here. But it happens to me, especially when I'm on set, that I trigger these menus accidentally. I don't know, I want to click something here, I want to switch my timeline to the 3D one, and accidentally I hit the screen and gone is the button I was just wanting to click. There are hotkeys for these two stacks, Q and W. So what I tend to do here in the user settings is switch this to off, and that makes my life a whole lot easier. All right, when you create a project, all this test and hit the create button. What now happens is that LiveFX suggests a whole bunch of paths here. I'll quickly set this to demo footage here. What do these project paths here do? So the first path is the media directory. The media directory is where LiveFX or Scratch or any of our software expects all the footage to be in. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't import stuff from just anywhere. You can, no problem. However, if you need to relink things or you need to move that project, let's say you want to archive the whole project and I don't know, you move it to a different location, you restore it maybe on a different machine, and ultimately the path to your footage changes. In order to relink all the clips, all the footage inside your project, all you have to do with LiveFX is tell it where the media directory is. It's not here anymore, it's now there. And everything that's inside the media directory, the whole folder structure inside the media directory, it knows, and it can relink footage automatically. Whereas if you have your footage scattered all around your workstation, you know, some stuff still resides in the downloads folder and so on. You can still relink these clips manually, sure, but that involves a whole bunch of clicks and manual housekeeping, and you shouldn't do it this way in the first place. And then there's subfolders of the media directory for stuff that you render, for stuff that you cache, for lookup tables you create or import. That's all secondary, not too important. The main thing is to know what the media directory is for. Then we have these default image format settings, and these are indeed just defaults and nothing else. Meaning, if I now enter this project and I'm set to 1080-24, let's hit OK. here's our test. I enter my project. My timeline number 1 here that is automatically created has these settings, 1920 by 1080 and 24 FPS. If I create a new timeline, we'll have those same settings. However, I can change the settings of any given timeline at any point. In Live FX, I would switch here from single shot to timeline and set this timeline to maybe 8K UHD. Great. As you can see down here, it's now changed. However, if I create a new timeline, that timeline will be back to 1920 by 1080 and 24 FPS. If I close my project, the project settings again, now I change my default to, let's say, 4K UHD, and let's make it 60 frames. Hit OK, enter my project again. Everything that existed in my project prior to this change in the project settings is still as is. So here I have my HD size timeline, and timeline number 2 is still my 8K timeline. Nothing has been touched with me changing the project settings. I just changed the default going forward. So any new timeline that I create, like this, that is now UHD at 60 FPS. All right. So what you do here in the project settings is just putting in defaults, but it doesn't nail you to anything at this point. Color management, I recommend to leave off if you're a beginner, because it prevents it simply prevents Live FX from applying color-based transforms under the hood. So you're looking at one image on your interface monitor, and the image on your LED volume looks completely different from that, and you're wondering, how did that go? So with color management off, you basically always get what you see. Yes, and I'd leave it at that for now, and enter the project. I already have a project prepared. I'll use that for the time being. And as you can see, once you're inside a project, you have these 3 tabs at the bottom here. There's a construct tab that you use to import clips, to create setups, to manage your media. We have the Live FX tab, which does everything that has to do with the picture, color grading, compositing, live linking, projection mapping, all that. And we have the Stage Lights tab, which deals with all your staged lighting. And we'll get to that in a different live stream, as I'm being told. All right. So over here, you can create new timelines. I'll do that. And I'll just import a couple of clips here. Should have a few here. Yes, I'll use these. Okay, so now I've just imported 4 clips here. What's important to know is over here the player mode. By default, it's set to single shot. And although we have all these clips in a timeline, so to speak, you'd be better off looking at a timeline more like a bin. It's a collection of clips, right? So if I enter this clip, for instance, as you can see, now I'm in the Live FX tab. I'm seeing the picture. 2 important hotkeys. Alt or Option, click and drag up and down, zooms the picture, and space, click and drag positions it anywhere in the viewport. So once you do that, let me give you a brief tour of the Live FX tab while this clip is playing. It's actually multiple clips wrapped into, or multiple scenes wrapped into one clip. You have the top menu bar. From here, you can call up scopes, for instance. All different kinds of scopes. Note, though, that these scopes do have a performance impact. You know, it's nice to have these scopes to check your footage and see whether everything looks good and is not clipped, etc., etc. But when you're shooting, when you're playing something out to the volume, I would at all times have these closed, because Live FX goes ahead and analyzes each and every pixel that you're playing here. Now, this footage is fairly small. That's just a UHD size. That is bearable, but still, why take the risk? So I would always close the scopes as soon as you're shooting. Other tools up here are the memories. Memories are to store color grades that you will use very often, up to 8 that you can store. So let's say I'll make this red, and I hold down Shift, click first slot, and now this grade is stored here. Now I'll just reset this and make a green version of this. store this here. And now by just clicking these, I can quickly recall these two grades. That's it. That's what the memories do. Let me reset this. With any numeric parameter, you can, of course, click and dial, like I showed you. You can also click into them and just punch in a number, I don't know, 30, like this. Or you can reset the parameter like this. You can also reset a parameter using Control-Click. It's quite a handy hotkey. Anyways, over here we have the layer stack, which you can trigger from here. So we're currently looking at a single shot here, and you can create layers, however many you need. And any of these layers can have any of the color tools down here on it. So not just the balance and the pre-gain sliders here. We also have color wheels, lift, gamma, gain. We have both of these pages, balance and primary, represented numerically. For instance, if I dial in blue in the gamma here, you can see if I go back to primary that the gamma wheel has been pushed towards blue, right? And a few additional settings here. We also have curves, simple luminance curves here. We do have hue versus hue, hue versus set, all the usual suspects that you know from other color grading packages as well. We do have the vectors here, which is kind of a combination of a hue versus hue and hue versus saturation curves. So if let me delete this layer real quick. So I can, for instance, grab blue and desaturate it by pushing it towards the middle, or turn it towards green or pink, etc. Things like this. I have a LUT menu to load a lookup table if I have. The canvas menu is interesting because it defines the layer itself, basically. So if I put a grade on here, let's make this dark. So go back to the canvas menu. I can cut this canvas in half by just, stretching it to here. I can give it some softness, something like this. This really helps if the DOP says, well, can we darken the, I don't know, leftmost edge of the LED volume a little bit? Sure, just move it over here and give it however much softness you want it to have. Stuff like this. Or maybe don't make it as dark, make it just a little bit brighter, something like this, whatever. And of course, you can, instead of a rectangle, you can choose a circle. Let me reset this real quick. Here we go, circle. You can invert the whole thing, of course. And you can also choose a freeform shape, something like this, right? And also add softness to it, move this around. Now, a layer cannot only contain a color grade. Oh, and we have keyers here, obviously. So I can choose, let's say, my HSV keyers like this, pick the blue. Let's go back here, pick the blue, something like this. And I can dial this in a little bit bigger. Saturation, more brightness values, something like this. You know how to use a keyer. Here in the options, you can blur it, you can clip the key, etc., and then you can color grade it. Desaturate it, or I don't know, apply hue shift, make it green. Whatever, you get the idea. However, a layer cannot only contain a color grade, it can also contain a texture. I'll hit play again. And a texture can be another clip. So if we go here to the fill matte menu, you can see it has a fill input and a matte input. That's these two fields here. And if I right click, I can import something from disk or fetch something from inside the project. I'll choose fetch, takes me here, and I just can grab this clip and drop it here in the fill field. It's the upper one, like this. And now I have this clip going through 2nd Street Tunnel in LA on this layer. If I enable and disable this layer, I enable and disable this clip simply. And I can, of course, move it aside or scale it down. And this way you can do a whole lot of compositing. When it's not a clip, it can be a plugin. So LiveFX comes with a whole lot of free Matchbox shaders, like this. So I can, for instance, apply something like, where is it? The lens blur here. Apply this onto a layer. And now I can dial in the amount of lens blur I want. Something like this. So this way I can just have an effect on my layer. Okay, time to introduce you to the right side stack here, which is quite important also for LiveFX. So by default, this is the version stack. You can have different versions of any clip. So let's say we color grade this really nicely. I'll make it just a little bit brighter, a little bit more contrast, a little bit more saturated. We're totally happy with this clip as it is. And now the DOP comes along and tells us, hey, can we try something? What would this look like if it would be dark and grungy and desaturated? Now, before you mess up everything you've done here, all your work, what you do is you just add a version here, like such. And now you go ahead and you desaturate it and you do whatever the DOP asks of you, something like this. Now it's dark and grungy, and maybe the DOP wonders, hey, could we maybe try a sepia tone? Sure. Let's just add another version real quick. Reset the saturation here. Instead, dial the saturation down here and color grade the image a little bit red, maybe not as dark. Okay, here we have a sepia tone. Now we have these three versions, the one we like, the desaturated one, and the sepia version, right? But this allows you to quickly go back and forth. So if the DOP decides, yeah, you know, this was nice, but let's just go back to the nice thing we had in the beginning, sure, no problem. Just select it here and you're done. And this way you don't have to hit undo a gazillion times. And if you're absolutely sure you don't need these two versions anymore, simply delete them. Here you go. If you don't do that, let me do two undos. Going back to the construct tab, you can see we have these versions here as well, with the sepia version here at the bottom. Now, a version of a shot doesn't have to originate of the same scene. I can as well grab this shot and drop it up here. We now go back to the Live FX tab. We have our two versions here and Second Street Tunnel as well. Okay, now let me delete these two versions here. What I want to do now, before we get into projection mapping, is introduce you to the node tree. Right now, we only have one single node here. So what I'll do is I'll nest the node. Okay. Now, as you have seen, our layer stack grows from top to bottom, meaning layer number 6 here right now is the topmost layer, actually, right? The node tree grows the exact opposite direction. Down here, we have our QuickTime file reader node that up until now we've been working on and adding layers to. And you can see if you go to the node menu, it reads QuickTime. And here you have the decoding options for the QuickTime file, which aren't that many. If this was a red raw file or an array raw file or something like this, you would have all the debayering settings in here. The settings for the particular node, which in that case would be a red raw file reader node or an array raw file reader node, etc. And the output of this node is then being piped into this nest node. Now, what's a nest node? I'm sure quite a lot of you people have used Resolve in their life, or maybe Autodesk Flame or Nuke or Fusion, any node-based software. And a nest node is sort of the equivalent to a serial node in Resolve. It's just a new node, and each of these nodes can have any number of layers on it. That's maybe the difference to Resolve. In Resolve, you don't have a concept of layers on nodes. But I could go to my 360 QuickTime file reader node and apply a layer here and maybe, I don't know, make this red, apply another layer and add some green to it, something like this. As you can see, these two layers here, layer 1 and 2, if I select them here, they also get selected here in the layer stack. And now on my nest node, as you can see, the layer stack is still empty. There's no layers on my nest node. I can add a layer here and dial down the saturation, maybe just a little bit, something like this. And this layer feeds onto the nest node here. So with the layers here in the schematic, it can be quite confusing, and it can also crowd the node tree real quick. So what I do is, over here in the user preferences, what I do is I find this setting called layers and schematic. And instead of saying this to all layers or only fill mud layers, meaning layers that have a fill or a mud, something like a plugin or another clip feeding into it, I'll set this to no layers. And this way I use the node tree to navigate nodes, and I use the layer stack to navigate layers on the selected node. So on our file reader node here, we have these two layers, the one that makes things red and the one that adds green to it. And on this node, we have the desaturation layer. Now, as you can see, my viewport is locked. If I unlock it, I can view the actual node that I'm selecting here. So if I select this node, I get the green and red layer here, and I see only that effect. I do not see the desaturation effect on the other node. Only if I select that node, I get to see that, like such. However, I can lock my viewport to the top level node here and then select a node somewhere else in the node tree and work on that node while watching the whole composite from the top level node. So this is something you need to explicitly enable here with the lock icon. Okay, let's finally get to projection mapping. This should be enough for a quick introduction to the Live FX tab and how you treat pictures and all that. Let's go back to the construct. Oh, actually, let me quickly reset all this. There we go. And we will now create a projection. And I'll start with simple 2D footage. So in the construct tab, you have these three buttons here to import clips, to create a live setup, which is meant more for green screen, where you take in a live camera feed, and create a projection setup. If I hit this button, I get to this little menu here, where the first thing I do is I choose my stage. And the stage is created in the Stage Manager, which I can get to through the Edit button. Here we go. So the Stage Manager is the heart and soul of everything projection mapping in Live FX. It has these four tabs. First tab is where you can select the stage. Here is the XR stage that you guys have with two screens, back wall and a ceiling. And I also have created just a simple stage with a flat back wall. I'll leave that active for now. From this tab, you can also import and export any stage. This becomes important when you want to move stage configurations across multiple machines in a multi-node setup, or if you want to do an in-display Unreal workflow with Live FX, then you can export things from here. In the Walls tab, you can configure your walls. Here I only have this one wall. As you can see, there's the resolution and there's also the tile count. An LED wall, as you might know, is always made up of single LED tiles, and we have 8 rows and 20 columns of tiles here, simply. And then we position the wall in 3D space. So we have here this little gizmo. This is the world origin point, where X, Y, and Z are 0. And this is as agreed upon with the camera tracking system. The camera tracking system, wherever the camera is, the camera tracking system also has to believe that this is the world origin point with 0, 0, 0 for X, Y, and Z. And everything you do here in the Stage Manager is relative to that point. So typically, once you agree with everybody in the studio as to what the world origin point should be, some people put it right here into the center at the very bottom of the LED wall, of the back wall. Others put it like 3 meters in front of the wall, something like this, where the talent usually stands, something like this. So since this is 0, 0, 0, I have configured my main wall to be 3 meters back in Z space. Every single one of these squares you see here in the Stage Manager is 1 square meter. All right. And the next thing we'll have to do is tell Live FX how we are sending content to the LED processors. And this is what we do here in the Mapper tab. Now, as you can see, my wall here is 4,000 pixels wide and 1,600 pixels high. So looking at the mapper here, if I output a normal UHD-sized signal to the LED processor, I won't be able to fit the wall in because the wall is 160 pixels wider than my image output that I have. So as you can see, the last column of tiles doesn't fit in here. So what I did was I created 2 mappings, and that's what you do here. You choose a display and a wall that you want to pair together. And in my case, I used an NDI output, but just assume this is a GPU output or an SDI output. And I created 2 times the same mapping with the main wall and my virtual LED processor that I created here in this menu. You can create virtual LED processors simply to prep things. on your laptop whatsoever. And once you get to the stage, you can swap out these virtual LED displays against actual display outputs that the workstation actually provides, which is nice. Anyways, what I did here was 2 times the same mapping to the same output. And on the first mapping, I basically cut off the last column. Of the 20 columns we have, I told LiveFX, hey, you only take 19, please. And then the last column here, I offset my mapping by 19 columns and made my mapping just 1 column wide, which then gives me the last column. And I rotated the whole thing 90 degrees to fit it down here because there's still space. All the space down here is unused. Now, the thing is, obviously, I have to configure my LED processor the exact same way and tell it, hey, your signal is coming in this way with most of your columns mapped up here and the last column rotated 90 degrees down here in the corner. And in my LED processor, I need to arrange my tiles that make up my LED wall in a similar way. Or the other way around. Maybe I've done this in the LED processor already and I need to tell LiveFX how to accommodate that. New in version 9.9 is the previous tab, where you can have these objects here. We have a bunch of default objects: a person, a sphere, a cube, a pyramid, and a car. And I took the liberty of importing a cow. And you can use this to create previous snapshots using this button here. I'll show you that in just a bit because right now we're not running a scene and it's a bit pointless. Anyways, we have set up our stage. Just to give you an idea of the stage that you guys have, we have 2 walls here, the back wall and the ceiling. Both are positioned differently. As you can see, the ceiling is 4 meters up in the air, 2.5 meters back from the world origin point. That is 1, 2, 3, what is it? About 6 meters in front of the back wall. And here in the mapper, it's mapped out like this through the dual head of your GPU, one of the GPU outputs, probably an NVIDIA Mosaic, I would think. Okay, let me choose my simple stage again. Disable the cow and the car. There we go. Close Stage Manager, and we're back to our projection setup wizard. And what I will do real quick is yes, I'll use this 2D clip. Drop this in here. LiveFX recognizes this clip as being a simple 2D clip. I can do frustum projection. I can choose a camera tracker. The list here on macOS is a little bit short, but on Windows it's much longer because certain tracking systems only support Windows. And I'll hit create. And what I will do real quick to clean this up and make it a little bit more approachable is disable the background. Okay. So what do we have here in our node tree? It's a very simple node tree. At the bottom is the file reader node. It's again a QuickTime file, just a 2D clip. And it goes into a frustum to wall node. The frustum to wall node is what actually takes care of the projection. So if we right click and bring up our stage manager, now we can see our camera and the wall and the content on the wall. So here in the camera wall tab of our frustum to wall node, we have linked it to the stage manager and told it which wall to project to. Right now, it's just the single wall that we have. And we also linked it to the shot camera. The shot camera is here in the camera menu. This defines the shot camera. And as you can see, it's disabled, so there's not much going on. I'll get back to that in just a sec. On the very top here, we have a switcher node. This is a simple video switcher node. It has inputs and outputs, and it does video routing, just digitally. So if I right-click and bring up my channel controller, that controls my switcher node here, and go to the Displays tab, I can choose what my video switcher node should do. And like I said, on my MacBook, I don't have multiple GPU or SDI outputs. I only have my NDI output right here. And my NDI output, I can tell, hey, you output the stage mapping, meaning I will output through NDI whatever I have configured here in the Mapper tab of my stage manager, which right now is set to my virtual LED processor. So I should probably change this to NDI instead, which messes up my mapping. I'll leave it with that for now. Anyways, so with the switcher node, you have one input per wall. Right now, we only have one wall in our stage manager here. If I was to create the exact same projection setup with the XR stage at the university, let me quickly switch to that, make this the active stage. I have two screens. I have the ceiling and I have the back wall. Okay, so if I now do the exact same thing and I hit create, as you can see, I now have this node tree where at the bottom I have my QuickTime file reader node, and now I have a projection node for the back wall and a projection node for the ceiling, and both feed as inputs into the switcher node at the very top. As you can see, I now get two inputs here, input 1 and input 2. And yeah, in my stage mapping, I can route things again to certain outputs, like my NDI output, just so you understand the node tree. And now I can, of course, color grade everything that I want right here on the switcher node. So if I apply color grade here, making everything super warm, something like this, this will be applied to everything that goes through the switcher node. Meaning, if I right click and go to the stage manager, so you can see both the ceiling and the back wall are now in this super warm color. However, well, let's keep it like this. Let me reset this. I can, of course, also color grade just the back wall by selecting either the projection node or the, well, actually right now I can't select the QuickTime file underneath. I'll show you why in just a bit. I'll choose the projection node and just make the back wall red here, as you can see, while the ceiling stays unaffected. Going to the ceiling node, I can make that green, etc. I can color grade them individually. That's the point I'm trying to make here. If I now go to my QuickTime node, as you can see, there's a dotted line between these two, meaning that these two nodes are instanced, which goes to say that if I color grade one, I also color grade the other. So let's make this red. And as you can see, both ceiling and back wall go red. Why are we doing this? Very simple. If these are instances of each other, this means LiveFX only has to read in and decode this clip once, and also only process, calculate, apply the color grade that I'm putting on this clip just once. And then it just copies it over into the second branch. That's what's happening here. It's a resource saving thing. And like I said, if I want to treat the two individually, I can do that here on the projection nodes. All right, I have like 4 minutes left. What I will do is quickly show you a 2.5D setup that I built previously. And I should make my other stage the active stage again. There we go. I've prepared these composites here. And as I understood, what you might be doing is also a 2.5D setup. So what have we here? At the top, we have, again, a switcher node. But in this case, I only have one input, so it doesn't have that much to do. Down here, I have not a frustum to wall node, but I have a plane to wall node. If we go to the stage manager, we can see we have now arranged a whole bunch of planes along the z-axis. And this way, when we move our camera, which I will do manually since I'm not connected to a camera tracking system, we go, moving it back and forth, we can get this parallax. I know some of you have already seen this this footage. It's quite old. We got this from Kubrick at some point. I promise I'll look for new footage eventually. But this just shows 2.5D so perfectly well. What we have here on this plane to wall node is basically just the background, which is the sky, right? And going to the node menu here with our plane to wall node selected, I can position this sky, left, right, etc. I can make it bigger or smaller, simply adjust the plane here that I have. Now on the next layer here, we have the mountains, as you can see, and we have this over here. So here's the PNG with the mountains feeding into this node, which is another plane to wall node, and that in turn feeds onto this layer called plane 2. And we move on with all our layers, and I took the liberty of adding some smoke in here. That's the fog plate here, added behind the rocks, and I added a color layer because, well, color is our strength, right? So if we look at this, the original scene was this here. I think this is how the scene comes in. No, this is how the scene comes in. This is without any color grading. And through the power of color grading, you can make this look like a midday scene. What I did here was I went into our sky. No, the sky is here. And in the curves, I desaturated all the red and yellow tones and also the green tones a little bit. If I bypass that, you can see, you should be able to see. Oh yes, need to bypass the vectors as well. Oh, and my color grade, which makes it dark blue. But you can see there's more red and yellow now here in the sky if I bypass the curves and the vectors. So I took out these colors. I desaturated the green a little bit, turned a little bit more into blue, things like this. And then an overall color grade that made it a little bit brighter. And now it looks midday as to compared to the non-graded scene, as you can see here. This is the day for night scene or the early morning scene if you want. Same here, going into my node tree here. This is just a color layer on top that makes this dark and a little bit blue and gives it more of a night or morning feeling. Over here, we have the sunset version, let's call it that. Again, it's just a quick color grade, which you can dial in really fast, even faster if you have a grading panel. It only takes a couple seconds to dial this in, which is nice. Okay. I've tried to cram in as much as I can into the 45 minutes I'm given. I hope you have a good understanding of how to create a project, how to import footage, how the node tree and the layer stack works, and the stage manager. Well, I guess we'll see each other in the next session. Yeah, Victoria, do you want to take over again?
Yes, thank you so much for your presentation, Mazze. I think you used the same Kubrick plate for the presentation that you did for the Virtual Production Guild last year as well, so I do recognize that for sure.
I'm sorry, I'll look for new content.
All is forgiven. I want to thank you again for your detailed breakdown of setting up the LiveFX software for a 2.5D project. I'm going to turn to our viewers to ask if there are any questions, and I see that there is one already from Reese. He asks, when you fetch a new clip for a new layer, are you still able to varispeed in any way? I've had a few times where I've dragged in a video file and not been able to varispeed it.
Yes, you can do that. What you would do is also pull in a retimer plugin. Can I still share my screen?
Absolutely. I will.
Okay. Then
Switch
I'll
back.
quickly show that. So this is not good. Let's do this. I'll do a projection setup with a 360 clip, giving a spherical projection. Okay. Same here with the node tree. Here is the source clip, the full 360 degrees, feeding into a EQ equirectangular to wall. node taking care of the projection. So if we wanted to slow down this clip, which is 30 FPS, we would select it here, go to Plugins, Effects, choose the Retimer plugin, and instead of applying it on a layer, we want to apply it to the node, which will insert it. If I do this, this is what we have now done. Here is the source QuickTime, and here's our retimer plugin, and then the retimed content is being fed into the EQ to wall node, and from there into the switcher node. But as you can see, I'm getting a little, it's not running fluid. I'm not sure if the screen share at all is smooth, but the retimer plugin takes quite some performance away. And I could, I don't know, slow this down to 50% maybe. Now it would be super slow. And obviously the clip would have double the length. So what you have to do is go to the Live Effects menu here and also double the length of the clip. And you need to do that for every node up here. So the retimer one gets ×2. And then going up here, the projection node also needs ×2. And up here as well, ×2. It's a bit tedious. And obviously the other way around if you speed up a clip and shorten it down. And it works the same way if a clip is on a layer. So let me remove the retimer node here. Let's say, yeah, on our projection node, I create a layer. I fetch a clip, Second Street Tunnel, here we go, drop it into the fill field. So now this clip lives on this layer here. With this layer selected, I can go to plugins again, choose the retimer, and this time apply on layer. What this will do is insert the retimer here. So here's our Second Street Tunnel source video. It's being piped into the retimer plugin and from there onto layer number 1 of this node. And we can dial in with that layer selected. We can dial in the properties of the retimer plugin. You have the choice between nearest frame, meaning frame duplication simply. So if I speed down to 50%, it will simply duplicate every frame. Rolling mix, meaning frame blending. Both are relatively easy on the hardware. You can also set this to motion estimated. This will be dead slow. And I would definitely recommend that if you need something high quality motion estimated, you apply that to your clip upfront and you render it out into a new clip, which Live FX Studio allows you to do. Switch the toolset to finishing, and now you have the render tab here where you can do all sorts of things outside of the scope of this session. But yes, while you can do retiming pretty dynamically in the node tree in the player, I would recommend doing that upfront and rendering it out as a new clip.
Thank you so much, and I hope that you were able to answer Reese's question. He'll let us know in the comments if he needs any more clarification or if people can reach out to you directly as well. Is that possible?
Absolutely. You can reach me at support@Assimilate Inc., assimilateinc.com. Send it to support. This way also my colleagues can read it and I don't have to forward emails and log files and stuff like that. But it will anyways be very likely me who's answering.
Wonderful. And I see that there is another question in our comments from Graham. He asks, what is the workflow to use Assimilate over multiple machines and have it frame locked?
Oh, that's a good question. So let me share my screen again. Here we go. Close project. So with version 9.9, we introduced an actual multi-node workflow, which is still in its early days. There's still a bunch of stuff that we want to do on that front, but you install Live FX on however many machines you need. It's the same software, the same license, etc., the same price. We don't have a different client versus editor versus director. We don't do nothing of that. It's just Live FX, and you install it onto however many machines you need. Then, on the machine that you declare the editor or the master machine, you go to the multi-node menu down here, and you tell Live FX, well, you are the master. Good stuff. And then you have 3 sync options. Sync player will only sync the playhead between all the machines, meaning you can have whatever content loaded to your timeline. All that this mode cares about is to move the playhead to frame 330. or once you hit play here on the master machine, the client machines will also play, etc. That's all it cares about. It does not care what codec, what clip, what content, what resolution, etc. is underneath the playhead. This just controls the playhead. Sync project is more for a live event thing where the project is locked in, there will be no changes whatsoever, and you just want to fire up the same project on all machines and say go. And what you will use in virtual production is likely sync session. So in here, you can see all the clients that might be logged into your multi-node session. If I quickly switch this to client, you can see this is the view from the client side, where you pick your master system if you have one, and tell LiveFX where your media is and which folder it should put any kind of cached files in. The media needs to be available the very same way. This brings me back to the media directory here. For multi-node workflows, it's essential that you have a media directory and you have all your media in there, and you essentially copy that media folder, including the folder structure, everything that's inside, to the other nodes. The alternative is that you have that only once on a centralized storage, and that storage should be fast enough to serve all the machines that are reading the content off of it, right? Anyways, on the client machine, you say, well, your media is here, and it's the exact same folder structure, file names, etc. All that has to match. You can use an app like FileSync, free FileSync, or something like this to distribute everything across the machines. And back to the master machine, you start the server here, and the client machine will then see the master and choose it and connect to it. And as soon as you enter your project here on the client machines, it will also enter a temporary project that's being sent over on the fly. That's just kilobytes or megabytes at best of data. It will automatically link to the footage that's locally and play out as expected, basically. Yeah, that's it. And then everything you do here on the master machine will be replicated on all the client machines that are connected to the session. What you can do is set a moderator. So you can choose any of the client machines, hit the set moderator button, and now that client machine can take care of color and compositing, etc., if you wanted to. Hope in a nutshell that explains it. I don't want to over stress my time here.
We are out of time, unfortunately, but I'll let people comment for one more minute if they have any leftover questions. And if not, I would like to ask you to share any closing off words. But of course, you'll be coming back to share a lot more about image-based lighting and who knows, maybe more.
Happy to do image-based lighting, 360 rectangular degree projection, spherical projection, Unreal Engine workflows. With version 9.9, we've introduced an end display workflow, which is really cool and easy and set up in just minutes at the maximum. Pretty cool. I'd love to show you guys how that all works. Other than that, I hope you have a good basic understanding of how the app is made up, how it works, and how to get from A to B and get a picture out to the LED volume. If you have any further questions, feel free to ping me under support@assimilateinc.com. Happy to answer all your questions. Yeah, well, have a great rest of your day.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for joining the Avenue Masterclasses, Mazze. We will be seeing you very soon, so don't go anywhere.
I'll stay here, no worries.
And I just want to thank everyone again for tuning in and watching the live stream. If you ever want to take a crack at the Assimilate Live FX software, then you're welcome to rewatch this episode or share it with your colleagues and peers. You can find the recording on our LinkedIn page at Avenue CoVE. If you want to join one of our Avenue Masterclasses, then make sure to let us know over on our contact form on our website, avenuecov.eu, or send us a message directly here on LinkedIn, again at Avenue CoVE. Also, make sure to follow us to stay up to date on our next masterclasses, especially those with Mazze himself. And otherwise, myself and the rest of the Avenue team wish you a wonderful evening. So, goodbye.